After a lot of testing during CBT, the ranking needs to be adjusted from my last tier list video. For example, Max got nerfed hard during this CBT. She is not a tier 1 doll anymore. In this video, I will talk about the shooters specifically. The rank in this video is based on their early and mid-game strength and how easily they can be obtained and trained. Some dolls may have excellent performance in the late game but need time and resources to max out. They might not rank high in this video. In fact, the battle has a natural output environment advantage due to the long attack distance. So in the early stages of the game, you just need to ensure that your shooter has the ultimate output capability. But in the middle of the game, the enemy damage will increase once the enemies get close to the shooters. They are easy to die. The game's late-game enemies will add a lot of debuffs to your team, then the shooter will need more mechanisms to stabilize the output. Now let's talk about Tier 0 shooter Hubble. Why is Hubble a god? First of all, to introduce the current ceiling role within the game, the passive skill, plain and simple powerful, can enhance the total attack damage. Auto skill, which has high true AoE damage due to her extra hash rate growth. So the ultimate skill is a full screen damage move with control while having the effect of displacement and gathering the enemies in the center. As a result, Hubble is able to play an excellent match with various skills in the game, including the automatic skill. One thing you need to pay attention to is that the ultimate skill is not high damage to a single enemy, so don't autopilot her when fighting the raid bosses. As a 3-star shooter role has very high basic attributes, growth, and true damage control skill, she is the ultimate weapon, and these output characteristics mean that Hubble's both attack speed or algorithm bonus can be effectively used, and almost any function can be perfectly utilized. Whether it is to protect herself or cooperate with her teammates, the results are excellent, so Hubble is strongly recommended to everyone. The second shooter is Freenow. She is a tier 1 shooter you can get for free in the beginner of the game, and she has a decent attack. Also, she has excellent self-protection skill, which means a lot for the fragile shooter. Her passive skill not only greatly improves her survival ability, but also ensures the stability of her output. Even in some bad terrain fights, we can put her in the front row to absorb some damage, and then she can warp back to adjust the position. Her automatic skill, Pulse Laser, can quickly stack the burn, which can cause high true damage to highly defensive enemies. The ultimate skill is also a great AoE damage skill against enemies who don't move. In conclusion, Freenow has a high and stable output capacity and can adapt to a variety of terrain and environment. Performance is stable no matter whether it is early or late game, so it is very worth training her as the main output. The third shooter is Chanzhi. She has very high AoE damage. Her damage is mainly from her passive. By stacking markers and detonating to cause explosive damage, automatic skills shoot the enemies on free straight lines to cause damage and add markers. It works with a lot of functions with special effects, but according to multiple tests, this enemy will only be damaged once and add only one stack, and at the same time, because the additional 2 normal attacks are considered skill damage, cannot trigger the function of the attack effects, therefore significantly reducing her damage. Her ultimate skill seems to have a high damage amplifier. However, it says total damage, so it is not that high. After testing, the damage will not be reduced with the number of hits on the enemy, so accuracy or attack speed doesn't affect this skill in the additional extended state, just icing on the cake effect. In the final evaluation, Chanzhi will become the highest output of the AoE damage dealer. Her damage will even exceed Hubble in the late game, and her gain buff from function cards is extremely high. The disadvantage is that she has a high output but lacks the functionality of Hubble. At the early stage, because the enemy's health is relatively low, they might already be dead before you detonate the stacks. So the output ability is limited, but after all, the 3-star doll has good attack growth. Another thing worth mentioning is that her range is short. The position usually should not be too far back, but also to pay attention not to get too close to the enemies. The fourth shooter Lam is a typical critical damage dealer because her attack speed is fixed and growth rate is 0. so its passive is mainly dependent on the function cards and the skills of other dolls to enhance. For example, the function card called Hotgun Rapid Fire can increase her attack speed by 100 within 5 seconds. Then the critical rate will be 100%. But if you have to specify the orange function to be able to guarantee high blast, the applicability of long becomes low. So she needs a high skill level to increase the conversion rate of attack speed and crit rate. Her automatic skill is an extremely outrageous single target skill to full health enemies. It can reach a 560% damage amplifier. If you can pair her with any function which can increase critical damage, you even can kill the full health backline in one shot. Her ultimate is also a very good AoE skill. If it deals a critical hit, one ultimate you can clear all enemies. The final evaluation, the critical damage shooter function greatly enhances the crit shooter's power. But it is difficult for her to obtain buffs from other shooter function cards except for the attack speed or critical damage cards. While not all maps have crit function, so this doll in the early stages of the game is destined to average performance. So she is not recommended to spend too many resources on her training. The fifth shooter is Earhart. Her algorithm adds very high damage and can profit a lot from function cards. But because the core output of Earhart is from the automatic skills, so it needs a fast charge and attack speed bonus. And the passive not only provides it with the needed bonus, but also allows her making full use of this skill. Her auto skill, Death Dive, is the most stats raising skill in the whole game. Her damage is from both physical and algorithm. The damage will be very good if you can max this doll. In another word, it is not recommended that new players use her in the early game. Her ultimate skill Neptune, Boom Blast, determines the lowest damage she can deal as it doesn't require crit function to maximize its effect. But it's very dependent on the star level. In conclusion, Earhart has an excellent base output and extremely high function return when she reaches 5-star and max skill levels and can be considered one of the damage ceilings of the single output, but therefore not very useful in the early stage, not recommended for beginners. The sixth shooter is Seymour. CN players like to call her Junior Wayne. The current stage is a Tier 2 shooter. She has superb self-protection and covers teammates' ability, and has a very high function gain. Her passive skills, Ghost Walker, work great on both output and self-protection, and even can use stealth to block the intersection to jam the enemy, and protect her teammates. Automatic skill is the total damage fixed skills. It is a very explosive skill, and the ultimate skill is actually very good to use, even if it is not to restore health. Stealth is also able to help the whole team to turn over. In the final evaluation, Seymour's basic output ability is not outstanding, but its stealth ability in actual combat is very prominent, especially in the case of poor initial terrain. It's able to lift the hatred through stealth, or block the enemy, which stealth can bring extremely stable output environment. In addition, because the basic crit rate can also be enhanced through the electronic countermeasure system, making Seymour's upper limit is extremely high. If you can get full crit function combos, the damage output is even higher than Hubble. Chapter 2-10 is an excellent example. In addition, among the fault protocols, due to excellent self-protection ability of Seymour in the early stage of the functionless stage, the players who like to spend time on the fault protocols charter also need to invest resources in her training. But as a damage dealer who is dependent on functions, it is likely that the experience will be not smooth when they did not get the right function, so it is not recommended that all players train her early. The seventh is Max. She is currently a Tier 3 shooter. I liked her a lot when doing the beta test on the CN server. Now she has been nerfed a lot. Her passive deals true damage, but the frequency is very low, might be helpful when dealing with high defensive or shield enemies. Plus we have function cards about the true damage, so this skill is almost useless. Her automatic skill is relatively lower than most AoE skills from other dolls, which can only rely on the function to make up for it. The final evaluation, because all the characters unlock the full skill effect, and fragment dungeons are open for all dolls. Max's damage is not high enough, the function return is also low. So now she ends up at the bottom of the food chain. don't recommend players spend resources on her. The 8th, Octogen, is an exceptional doll who doesn't belong to any tier. I will tell you why later on. Passive skills, Sulfur Rhythm. The damaging effect on the dance enemies is comparable to the damage of her automatic skills. Octogen benefits from attack speed gain a lot. Automatic skills blasting performance. 5 bombs detonated are 300% damage for each one. If you can release Hubble Ultimate with this skill, it is an instant explosion. But under normal circumstances, the explosion will be blocked by the terrain. Usually does not appear the insane 1500% damage. And it is worth mentioning that because our dolls generally do not actively attack neutral terrain, such as the virus terrain with a strong negative effect, Octogen's AoE can easily deal with it. The ultimate skill, Grand Curtain Call, can instantly kill 2 summon array of enemies. Very useful skill. In many maps in which we need to finish the battle as soon as possible, Octogen is unreplaceable. And her damage after a variety of functions to add, can even kill the boss instantly. As the final evaluation, Octogen should be the ceiling of the arithmetic shooter. Perfect arithmetic growth is even equal to Hubble, although the function gain is lower than Hubble. She is still a tier 1 doll for the campaign. In some chapters, she can sacrifice herself to achieve the effect, which Hubble can't. She can also fit in the warrior team or special team. I consider her as a must-train doll for all players. You'll be able to get the best out of the game. The above is a detailed interpretation of all shooters. It really took a long time to make. If you like it, please subscribe and like my video. I will do more content like this in the future, so everyone can have a great start. Peace out.